his charts.
That means he kept good records.
Exactly.
He's all about his numbers. He's about
How to
having
space
a
everything.
vegan farm. He grows his own biomass to make compost. He'll grow sunflowers to make compost.
Yep.
And he does do double digging, which would be something that I would
So you don't need
not
to do
spend
it.
my time on. But the other stuff in there is fantastic.
Yeah, he has the moon phase planting chapter too that tells you what we were saying about how you plant by the phase of the moon.
How to grow more vegetables.
How to grow more vegetables. And then the subtitles, than you ever thought possible, unless and then you commanded.
That's such a long title.
This is a great time.
Just
What about
how-
the main
how
title in
to
the
grow
author
more
capital?
Yeah, John Jevons.
John.
John
Jevons.
Jevons. Yeah, we decided if you could own one book, it would be this. If you could own two books, it would be this one and this one. Elliot Coleman's New Organic
Oh, I
Grower,
have that.
which is one scale up. He's like small scale commercial.
Right.
And then the third thing would be all the seed catalogs that you could get. Like
Yeah.
Fedco and
I would recommend the
I'm gonna sign
Fedco
up for
catalog
Fedco.
and the Johnny's catalog. They're both based in Maine, so the climate that they're shooting for and the seeds that they're producing are very northeast appropriate.
What's that again?
Johnny's
Fedco?
is Fedco, and then there's an all organic seed company that has really grown a lot called High Mowing Seeds. And all of
You have a
their
catalog?
catalogs, I don't have it, but all of their catalogs are super informative. They're great.
You said it's called the other one, the independent, the new
High Mowing.
high mowing?
There's High Mowing, Fedco, and Johnny's were the three.
Mowing like mowing a lawn?
Yeah, High Mowing. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Sure, and those catalogs just have so much good information in them about the plant. That... So the couple of things, I mean, you guys know a lot about growing, but a couple of things that we thought might be useful that maybe you didn't know, maybe you did. One is a way to start seedlings, because I know that when you live in the city and you have a little window, you try to start your seedlings and they get really leggy as they point towards the window. And so one strategy, I actually learned this, I was supposed to be mentoring a gardener in a community garden, and she was from Bulgaria. And she taught me this method, which I thought was really brilliant, which is she created a tiny little greenhouse in her garden. So you could either do that with like a metal hoop and some plastic. You could even take like a plastic grocery bag, though it's not as ideal, and bury it in the soil with like some sticks holding it up.
Buried in the soil?
Yeah, so she took like some sticks. You know, she makes some sticks to kind of create a frame, and then she would take any kind of plastic, scavenge and put it over the sticks, and then bury the edges to create a seal in her greenhouse. I mean, what I would do is I would invest in actual greenhouse plastic, get some of those half-inch conduit piping from the Home Depot, bend it into a hoop, stick it in the ground, so you have a nice
What's it
structure.
called?
But this is
Conduit. And then what you would do is you create yourself a little greenhouse. It's a low tunnel.
It's a mini,
So and then
a mini hoop.
take whatever seedlings could be transplanted. So that includes like your lettuce, your peppers, your tomatoes, your kale, your squashes. All of those are the types of plants that you can plant and then move to a new location when they have reached their first true leaves. So the plant has seed leaves, and then after the cotyledons, the true leaves, so the fourth leaf, you can transplant them out to give them more space. So what you do is you plant them close together inside of your mini greenhouse, and then when they are at the air is the appropriate temperature for them, which you have to look in a chart if you don't already know the plants, you move them, you scoop them with their soil out of your greenhouse into your main garden. And that saves you from having to buy your own seedlings, and it also gives you a jump start in the season. So if you plant a kale plant, like in New York City, you could probably get your kale plant in the ground by like March 1, you know, in your little mini greenhouse. And in that protected, warm environment, it will grow, you know, and then when it really wants to be outside is maybe like April 10. So now you have a whole 5 weeks of head start that you got on your kale plant. You can scoop it out, and then now it's getting crowded in there, right? So you can take it and space it at the correct spacing, which is about 12 to 15 inches for kale, out in your main garden. And that's just an easy, you know, because if you start seedlings in your windowsill, which is the inclination, they'll be weak. And oftentimes when you plant them in the ground, because they've been struggling for light, they get set back so far that it doesn't really give you the advantage that
That's
you're
what
looking
happens a
for.
lot.
That's what happens, yeah. But how
What
do
do you think about hardening? Excuse me. What do you think about hardening?
Hardening up your seedlings? We
Yeah.
do. So what we do in our house is they start inside, right? Then they move out to the greenhouse. Then from the greenhouse they move to the pallets on the edge of the forest, and then we put them out. So with this method, you know, the idea with hardening is that you don't want your seedlings to be shocked by a new environment.
Right.
So say you had your little greenhouse, you know, open it up a little bit so some air can get in, you know.
Okay.
And so they start to experience.
You'll want to do that anyway on a sunny day.
It'll get too hot in there.
Even when it's cold outside, that little hoop with plastic will have will heat up significantly and could burn your plants. So, you know, monitor that if that's something that you end up trying.
You don't need a thermometer to monitor that, do you?
Oh no.
Just feel it. Reach your arm in there.
I mean, we did get a thermometer that we're gonna put in that greenhouse, right?
You know, at that early time of year, things are just gonna want it cold. So it's like, you know, that'll get your jump start. But by the time it gets into the hot season, you probably wouldn't use it anyway. You could use it to start tomato seedlings and stuff.
Yeah, we need some ventilation. Good, thank you for that addition. That's important.
Are there any plants that don't like their roots disturbed, or like are you
Yes. So the plants that you cannot transplant, there's many, but the ones that come to mind, and any rooting crop will not want to be transplanted. So beets dislike transplanting, carrots, parsnips.
The root vegetables.
Yeah, root vegetables don't like to be transplanted. Some things are just more practical to direct seed, even though you could transplant them. So any peas or beans, given the size of their seed and how hardy they are, it's just not advantageous to transplant them.
Any
What do we not
greens that you'll use for cutting, like arugula, salad mix, like a mesclun mix.
Yeah, we don't transplant those because you're planting them so close together because you want like the little baby leaves and you're going to cut them. So you just sprinkle the seed in. So we transplant lettuce for head lettuce.
Right.
If we want each plant to have its own space and grow into a full head, that we start in a seedling tray and then we transplant.
But if you want leaves, you said cutting different times, just for taking out what you want. That's what you mean. You don't transplant those, okay?
We don't. We do those as like a row, and they only get so big, and then we trim them. So we're cutting them for like baby greens.
I had cut you off before, Arabella. You want to ask a question?
No, I was just wondering how do you use that process with the mini greenhouse for just the windowsill, because I don't have like inside.
I don't have any outside space.
Right.
You know, I'm honestly not an expert in windowsill gardening. I've grown herbs like in a windowsill. You know, ideally, can you put a window box outside so I can get more sun?
Or what about a light?
A light? Maybe a light.
Fluorescent light.
Maybe a fluorescent light in my yard.
That's what we use.
We've done stuff without lights, and we just started using lights. They're not fancy grow lights. They're just kind of natural daylight fluorescent lamps,
Oh, okay.
and it's amazing.
Really?
Really?
The seedlings just want light,
They just want light. Okay.
and you know, a healthy seedling will probably be in a flat for 3 or 4 weeks,
4 weeks.
before you put it out. That's it. You know, so if you have a tomato seedling that's like this tall after 4 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, you know it's stunted or something. It's
Yeah,
not
that's what
getting
happens to my
something.
tomato.
But if you go to the store and you buy a tomato seedling that's this big, you know that's actually not what you want. That's
Yeah.
like people think that's nice.
Yeah.
It's not. That's a plant that's like over mature.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you know, a 16-year-old
That's a
going
good
to
point.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
Is that bowl of cherries out there still?
16-year-old
Cherry tomatoes?
kindergarten? Yes, but they're in kindergarten. They're allowed to drive.
And then the other thing we were just thinking about is, you guys know this, like soil is the most important thing, the health of your soil.
Absolutely.
So, you're welcome. So compost is probably the most straightforward way to get good soil, having your own compost pile. There's like,
Even if you have to use the worms in the city, or
yeah, I mean, you don't have to use worms. There's a nice picture of like 4 different kinds of compost piles. In the city, it's usually best to either do like fencing, a circle of fencing that's reinforced with some boards. And the smaller the fencing, the fewer types of animals that can get through. In the city, people often put fencing underneath also and like a lid on top. Or pallets. And you can line the pallets, tap on fencing with the pallets also, and cover it.
Oh,
And
that's a great idea.
yeah, because you can scavenge those.
Yeah, because we already got the mesh cloth because that's our next project is to build compost bins. But I hadn't thought about pallets instead because we're going to get wood. Or- That's a great idea.
Yeah, those are
Okay.
pallets, the ones that we have out there.
Oh, really?
We just tie them together too. We
Really?
don't tie 'em, like hammer them or nail them or anything.
But if you think in
So
an urban
really-
area, it's more important that it's tight. So I think it does make
Right.
sense.
And we'll probably have to put the mesh cloth like around it or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the trick with compost, I mean, it's nice if you want worms in your compost pile, which is always helpful. Just get a scoop of healthy soil that has worms in it and throw it in every once in a while into your compost. But the main ingredients in compost are just your browns and greens. You need
Right.
you need your vegetable matter or your weeds, which are your greens.
Right.
Food scraps are your greens, and then your browns are like your leaves, your hay, your shredded paper. And as long as those two are balanced 1-to-1 and your compost pile is moist, compost will happen. Like
Right.
you don't have to turn it, you don't have to mess with it, you don't have to shred things. Like it takes longer the rougher, the coarser material you put in there. But you know, once you get your system, it doesn't really matter because you have one bin that's cooking, like composting, one that you're adding to, one that you're taking from. Once your cycle's going, it doesn't matter if it takes 3 months or it's 5 months. You know, just let nature do your thing, do its thing.
In the city too, leaves are a great resource. I don't know about New York City, but every other city I've lived in, people put out those big brown bags
Yeah. We
of leaves, and leaves are fantastic. You can use them as mulch. So where we use hay here, because hay is our local resource, you could use leaves in your pathways. You can use leaves around your plants. You could use leaves as your browns in your compost. One advantage to leaves, in addition to them being available to you, is that they encourage a lot more fungal decomposition.
Right.
And as we kind of
Like
like
newspaper or something.
newspaper is pretty good. Yeah, if you want to get into like the sheet mulch kind of thing. But as we were just briefly talking about yesterday, encouraging soil life, not just bacterial life, but also fungal life. Leaves, in particular, do that. So you don't want to use green grass clippings fresh. They compost way too hot. So that would be something to put in your compost pile, not directly in your garden beds.
Do you have to worry about, like when using leaves, like that they've maybe come out of toxic soil?
Yes.
Yes,
The answer to that is yes.
you probably do. And I hesitate because I just don't know. Leaves are probably coming from a larger tree, street tree kind of thing.
Yeah.
What that's pulling up, I don't know.
What's the question? If it pulls up what?
Toxins in like leaves from say street trees or yard trees or anything like that.
Well, the thing is that I know with the phytoremediation projects I've been associated with, we're very conscious of not composting those materials, and that question came up because the Prospect Farm, the community garden I work with, has incredibly toxic soil, high lead levels, arsenic, and so on. And we've been remediating it, I think, rather well. Every soil test that we take them twice a year, shows reductions. It's really amazing. You know, it's
That's
really
very
amazing.
cool.
But
And you were phytoremediating that?
yes,
With,
and adding compost and all that stuff. But all the leaves, all the vegetative matter that we've grown from the phytoremediation goes to the landfill.
of course, because you're planting bioaccumulators, right? So they're designed to suck up. But there's certain plants that won't, they don't put that in their leaves. And so, from my understanding, a tree does not accumulate heavy metals in its leaves. I would verify that, but that's not an accumulator that you use to remediate because it's not effective at that.
It is used actually.
What kind of tree?
Some of the larger scale phytoremediation projects are done by like Exxon Corporation with aspen trees.
Okay.
And I think
Right.
Is one thing I've heard of. So,
Did you say
but it's
what
worth
kind?
verifying, you know, and what levels of toxicity are drawn up. I mean, if you're looking at, a Superfund site, I wouldn't use the leaves of any kind of
Anything,
plant.
right? Exactly. But if you're just talking about,
I mean,
And it's interesting, the balance too, because it's like, to what extent do you value using your local resources? To what extent do you need
Yeah.
to be conscious of recycling toxins?
Right. Right.
Actually getting a plant tissue sample is a little expensive, it's like $30 I think at UMass, but that would be an interesting thing to do, and like see
Yeah.
in your standard bag of leaves, you know, what's actually in there. Because if you can use it,
Yeah,
if you took a waste product and you just turned it into gold.
yeah, that's an interesting question. Should do some scientific research on
Yeah.
testing.
It's like, what does it mean if you go to Home Depot to get your bag of, you know, browns? That's kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. Was there something you wanted to share too?
No, just about mulching. I started talking about mulching. So.
You say anything else about mulching? How good it is?
We mulch as much as we can. We don't mulch things like lettuce and salad mix, and that are pretty short-lived crops. You know, salad mix, for example, if we're cutting it and there's all this hay around, you get a lot of hay in it. It's a pain in the butt. But things that are around for a long time, the whole brassica family, all the peppers and tomatoes and those kinds of things, great to mulch. You know, so the thicker the better.
So when you use paper, is it brown paper or can it be white paper?
We use unbleached brown craft paper. We buy it in large rolls.
I mean, we know people that use just like newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's
Recycle
sorting
newspaper.
things, I think a lot of it.
We've been using newspaper.
Cardboard.
Uh,
I go to a cardboard dumpster and take all that cardboard. Just take all the staples out and take the tape off and lay that down. And you can mulch your pathways.
Right. So like white paper is bleached paper. You wouldn't want to use that.
Probably not.
It's
It
less
seems like
ideal.
there's enough out there, other stuff out there.
Yeah.
You guys have inspired me to reread this book. I'm like, this is good.
Something
Good
like the
stuff.
pepper I was saying the other day was, what was it, the green pepper? We're looking at green peppers on our fire escape. We're growing green pepper on our fire escape. And the tomato plant. And he was saying that maybe the roots go down so deep that we need something deeper to plant them in. I had like in a big, I don't know, metal wash tub kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so does that make sense? Like if something runs deeper roots, then we need something bigger.
Absolutely.
Like the
I was gonna
pails
show
we
you
were
a
using
picture.
today? Are those considered pretty deep, like the pails that we're using
So
outside?
the lentil
The
pepper.
5 gallon?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good size to plant it.
And we need to also put holes in the bottom, right?
to drain it out. There's a picture of the size of roots in here I'm going to find for you guys. It's surprising how big the roots of plants actually are. Like,
Yeah, I think I was saying something like the roots seem like they were close to the top. So I was like, did they get stunted because they just can't go up and go down anymore? And then kind of like if you see a street tree, sometimes the roots look like they're all the way to the top of the level with the ground.
exactly. I don't know. Did you do container gardening, Jonah, when you were at RIC?
Not really.
So here's the vegetable root system shown to scale. So for example, like here's a carrot, that's the actual carrot right there in just one box. And that's the root going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 boxes. That's a beet, that's the size of a beet, 1/4 of a box that goes all the way down in 12 boxes. So it just shows you how much the plant really utilizes as much as you'll give it as far as space. And some are more shallow, like the cauliflower, which is just like broccoli, you can see is pretty shallow root, and you experienced that when you pulled it out. Just sort of a little clump of roots. Nice.
You can see why, we talked about this in the tour about soil compaction, keeping your soil for like not walking in your planting areas. And even so, like your pathways, your plants, like your healthy plants will actually reach their roots into those pathways as well. So, while that is where more of the compaction is happening, if you really can limit it to that, the roots are still reaching that far. I mean, they're really amazing plants. So all that.
You wanted to advocate for raised beds too. I know you guys already sold
Right,
raised
you guys
beds.
do
right?
raise.
And I thought we wanted to rather remediate the soil. I thought it was more beneficial for us to, even though it takes longer.
Oh, you can remediate and still, even our beds are raised beds. Like, you don't have to use wood per se. But the idea of having a depressed pathway, an
Yeah.
elevated bed, you know, and having the bed as an area where you do not step.
Oh,
And
okay,
that's
that's a different
Yeah.
paradigm.
It's
I was
different.
thinking raised beds just in terms of contamination.
Yeah,
You're just
'cause
saying
like-
raised beds
I know
also
what
in
you
terms
mean.
of
Yeah,
like,
it's like a total different
not compacting
when
the soil.
People are saying raised beds over where we're at, since most of the city is toxic soil.
I know what you mean.
You know, they're talking about importing soil, covering the toxic soil, and putting on
Compost.
imported. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, which
In the
raised beds
long
have a lot
run-
of benefits, but one of them can be that. But also, it's like you get better water drainage, you get better aeration, and not compacted soil.
But like, it doesn't allow you to grow stuff that have deep roots, because like if this is
Wait,
the
which raised
healthy
bed?
soil.
You're talking about if you put a barrier.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Between the toxic soil and whatnot. That's one
Good
thing.
point.
Like your roots can only go but so deep.
It's unsustainable in the long run. You still have
Right.
the toxic soil there.
But I'm glad you made that distinction because see,
Right.
when you go into a different environment, then the paradigm is a little bit,
Right.
is a little different. You like the black one?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And is this a salad that was made with your salvage greens?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should take home whatever's left of that. I don't know if you used it all. It doesn't look like you used it all.
What? Tastes like butter.
No, there's there's a whole
Yeah,
bunch
olive
still in the
oil.
cooler.
Oil, the gusto.
Is there anything else?
Tastes
Is there
buttery.
anything
That's the
that's
difference with good olive
that you
oil.
guys have seen or that we touched on this weekend that you'd
So
like us to talk further about? Clarifications? You feel like you can go home and apply everything useful here?